over. We have, looks like we've got about 15 people, including us.
Okay. Yeah, click tracking is fun. There's so many ways. Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
No, okay. No, I was gonna say keep talking. I'm gonna maybe wait till 5 after to get started with the questions.
Got it. Yeah, I was just gonna say I've seen click tracking salt in so many different ways, you know. But for me personally, I find if you make a standard taxonomy, you're in a better place because then people can learn it and they don't have to ask you every single time something new comes up, you know, what should the IDs for these components be or something like that.
Oh, see, we actually use attributes to break our entire site into regions, readable regions. So you know what it is because, you know, in a news site, there's my header, my main name.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I have dynamic names on all of our container blocks. So when the container is news, it says news. When it's opinion, it says opinion. When it's, you know, politics, it says politics. And as stuff moves around the page,
it stays.
It stays.
Yeah.
It's dynamic based on that. So
yep. Yeah, there's definitely some things we could be doing on our web properties to do some of that. But yeah, it's defined regardless if they move as well. It's just we found like with AEM sometimes these embedded, you know, auto IDs kind of come in, you know, unintendedly, and so we need to kind of figure out why that's happening. So
yeah, I don't like the IDs anyway. Those are for developers. Nobody knows what they are. Like, you know, you can tell people what they are, but it's a pain. Make it something readable for your reports and
yeah. Yep. Well, I make them do it anyways, but it's just I'm the nagging analyst that's making them do it. So. Yeah.
Cool. I think we are good to get started. Just keeping an eye on the invites and seeing them kind of taper or plateau a little bit. But welcome to Adobe Analytics Champions Office Hours, our March edition. I'm Kat. I'll be your host today. Just a couple pieces of housekeeping before we jump in. If you haven't been to an Adobe Analytics Office Hours before, welcome. This is an open forum where anyone can ask questions to our Adobe Analytics champions, who I'll let introduce themselves in a second. But we have a couple of pre-submitted questions through the survey that was in the invite of the user group event. And I'll also keep an eye on the chat for any questions that pop up there, and we'll answer those live. As Mandy mentioned, and they linked in the chat, the session is going to be recorded. It's going to be available on our YouTube channel, and we can take up any follow-up questions or follow-up discussions if there are any on Experience League. We'll kick off the intros. I'll start off. My name is Kat, as mentioned. I run the product analytics arm of Shift Labs, a consulting agency based out of Toronto, Canada. Shift provides tailored analytics, data science, and AI solutions to drive impact, foster innovation, and champion collaboration with our partners. So please reach out if you'd like to work with us. And then since Summit is around the corner, as I ask each Adobe champ to introduce themselves, thought it'd be fun to also include what we're most looking forward to at Summit, whether you're attending virtually or in person. So I'll kick it off to Jen to start.
All right. Hi, I'm Jen Dungan. I am the Optimization Manager Analytics at Torstar, which is, you probably haven't heard of Torstar, but you may have heard of the Toronto Star, which is our flagship newspaper. We are a news publishing company in the media space in Canada. And like Kat, I work out of Toronto, Ontario. And you know, for Summit, I don't know, lots of things. I mean, there's always, you know, the learning, seeing people you haven't seen in ages, getting to meet new people, inspire people to, you know, really get excited about analytics. I don't know. It's just everything I'm looking forward to. What can I say?
Cool. Megan?
So, Megan?
Hey, sure. Hi, I'm Megan Powers. I lead a team at CarMax called Digital Data Strategy. And we are responsible for capturing every piece of digital data on all our digital properties. So Carmex.com, our native apps, our auction sites, any of our associate-facing tools, etc. It's a team of half analysts and half developers. And we own, the tools like Adobe Analytics, Target, Launch, /tags, Google Analytics, Full Story, etc. I've been at Carmex for 9.5 years and a champ for 3 years. And I am most looking forward to being in Summit in person because the last time I did that was 2018. The next year my son was born, and then the world ended, and I haven't been able to get back. So I'm super psyched. I'll be there in person, and I'm probably most looking forward to just meeting my fellow champs in person because I've never met you guys face to face. So very excited. And I think I have a speaking session on Thursday morning, so I'll plug that that's the skills exchange if anyone wants to attend that. And I'm looking forward to attending my other fellow champs sessions as well.
All right, I guess I'll go next, or I guess I'm the only one, or is Mandy on here too? I can't see her anymore. So I'm Damon Hall. I've been at CrowdStrike for almost 3 years. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company. And at CrowdStrike, I run all of the conversion rate optimization and web analytics efforts. So I own, our Adobe Analytics implementation, Launch, Target, the SDK, and also in the middle of the migration to CJA. So, and prior to that, I was doing the same thing at SolarWinds. This is my first year as a champion. And the thing that I'm most excited about for Summit, besides seeing fellow champions, is learning, what other people are doing that's kind of new or niche, right? Like new practices and finding out, different things that people are doing that maybe we aren't. So Summit's always great for that, swapping notes. So that's the thing I'm most excited about.
And I'll shout out Women's History Month, so got to represent.
Oh, very nice.
Data too,
Right. For me, I'll be attending virtually. So I'm like you three lucky people. So I'm most excited to check out the online sessions. Our fellow champ, Mandy George, has prepared a session based on their viral calculated metrics playbook. So looking forward to hearing some insights from them on how they use calculated metrics in reporting. And for those of you who don't know, the keynote sessions and sneaks are all streamed live online. So make sure you block out those hours in your calendar so you can tune in. Mandy also called out the peer-to-peer connection space at Summit. So that is a space where you can come up, either book a time through your account representative on the Adobe side and connect with an Adobe Champ Live, kind of like an open live office hours, right as the community pavilion.
But you can also just walk up. There'll be people there most of the time, although we're all going to be, in and out, going to sessions and whatnot. But, there should be people around to help you, just come up, say hello, and we'll see if we can get you sorted.
Yeah. Cool. With that, I'll kick us off and start sharing my screen so we can jump in to the pre-submitted questions. Okay. So the first question we have is about creating Venn-based segments that match participation attribution models. Let me just zoom in a little. So the context, when they're using a visit-based segment for a page, do they need to see conversion, and they need to see conversion event results when you use participation or visit non-default attribution models?
All right, Damon, you still here? Because I know you
I
did.
think I am. I don't even know where I cut off. So, anyways, everybody just stopped moving, so I realized, oh, okay. So I probably look really silly.
We
All
just
right.
started jumping into the questions, and I think
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So the first one here. So this was an internal question that had come up where somebody was using Adobe Analytics to see the attribution or the impact of a page or a group of pages to a conversion event. So in this case, form completes. And the page that they were talking about didn't have a form. And so they were trying to understand what is the downstream impact of the homepage, let's just say in this example, to conversion. So if you were to drop in the homepage and your conversion event, you won't see anything because there is no such conversion event on your homepage. And what they were doing is they were using the non default attribution model. So if you click on the gear there, you can see that it's checked right here, right? And if you click it, you can set it to all kinds of different, linear, there's a lot of options, last touch, first touch, linear. But if you click participation and visit, the thought was that, that's what they can use to see that, that attribution. And for the most part, that works. But they also wanted to turn the homepage into a segment or an audience so they could see what else were people who did visit the homepage, what else were they doing, but still also see the same conversion data. This is actually something that Jen and I hopped on a call probably a year ago now? I can't remember. It was a while ago to solve why you can't see the same information by just simply making homepage visit based segment, and it turned out that it's actually sequential. So it the data that you're seeing with participation visits is actually downstream, meaning that you first visited the homepage and then you saw the conversion event happen. And that's why the numbers are different. And so you're not going to see what would happen in a visit based segment because that might count that the conversion rate happened before you hit said page, right? The homepage. So now if you go into the segment, the then based segment, so yeah, that segment is just a visit-based segment. It's pretty simple. And then if you go down to the segment that says then in parentheses, you'll see that it is a visit-based segment, but it says, hey, home and then the form complete happened. And you see that the numbers now match. And so now they were able to then use the segment and apply that type of segmentation to other page groups to see, attribution to form impact without counting form completes that happened prior to their visiting those pages. And I feel that that's, a more honest portrayal of that, data.
Yeah. And I just want to point out for those eagle-eyed among you, you might notice that the participation model and the last one say the same data. That is purely because this is sample data, and like everything starts from the home page. So yeah, you will see differences if you would do this in a real data set.
Yeah, good catch. That would have given me pause if I did that. And be like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
And now, if you're doing something a little bit more complex than just pages, there's another option, which is, say, if you're trying to tie this to like a product conversion. One of the things that we do in our company is like we've got a subscription wall, and that subscription wall, comes up on our article pages, and we want to know which walls drove to our actual conversions. In this case, I actually use conversion syntax, so merchandising eVar conversion syntax to track the wall interactions. So when somebody's on the wall and they actually click on that first CTA, I track that conversion syntax, and then that gets stitched in as the last touch element when I go to, my actual like purchase event. So, I mean, I know it's a slightly different model than this, but you can get
Similar
creative.
meaning,
It's very similar. Like you can get really creative with the way you use conversion syntax with your product data. So that's another thing to think about for anyone who's kind of, the wheels are turning about, this then model. There's doing it in post with segmentation and sequential sequences, but then there's also actually storing valuable data, at a merchandising eVar level and having that stitch right into your conversion. So lots of different ways of going about it, but I thought I would bring it up because it is a very similar stream of thought.
Yeah, it's valuable too. I think that for the most part, I haven't seen too many people, at least at beginning uses of Adobe Analytics, use that a lot. But it's actually a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Megan or Kat, you guys have anything to add?
No, I'm good on my end.
You guys covered it pretty well.
All right, scrolling down to the next question.
Yeah, and we can go out of order if we want, just if you don't want to hear me 3 times in a row. But if not, then I'll just go ahead. So you let me know.
I think we're good. I
Okay.
think we'll be on
All
time to
right.
get all of them.
Okay. So very often, at least in my role, we have a lot of different releases where we're trying to portray the impact to something, right? Like whether it's visits to a page or increases to performance KPI, form completes, form conversion rate, things like that. Our instance is very B2B, but this honestly applies to anything, right? Where you are trying to track conversion. And the struggle was that people were, they'd look at a line trend or a bar trend or even a combo trend. And if the person didn't know the exact moment that the release happened, they may not know if the increase or decrease in performance is associated when a release occurred or when some change happened on the website. And so something that I found that was pretty helpful is that you can actually take a time range. So if you go to the left and you look at date ranges, right? You can create your own date range and you could say, hey, up until this point was a time prior. And from this point onwards was my, my release event. So from this, date to this date. And then maybe I had even another event where I released something else. And that's, what I'm portraying here in this view. And then if you were to try to apply just those date ranges, it won't work because what happens is it will apply your date ranges and put them side by side. And the view doesn't quite show a sequential trend. But if you were to put those date ranges into their own segments, and you could name them the same or get creative, like in this case, I put just release 1, release 2, right? Then you can start to see a sequential difference. If you accidentally put it on just bar, it looks a little wonky, right? Because it'll show like 3 slots per, day. But if you switch it to stacked, then it looks like a pretty consistent flow where you see, hey, my dark blue is release 1 time period, my light blue is release 2 time period, and now my green is release 3, right? And so that way your stakeholders can see a very, clear indication of when the change happened for these different time periods and understand the impact to behavior and performance and things like that. So yeah, I found that to be useful. This is something I use all the time, and it was my response to some questions about differences in trend over time.
Yeah. Fun fact, I actually use it very similar to this, but for annotations.
Yes.
I use stacked area, and instead of separating it into 3 separate time periods, I'll have my one time period, and then I will have segmented. Here's the range I want to highlight,
Mhm.
and then I will just have the stacked area, and it will actually highlight the area of that period that I'm trying to, highlight. Like, could be, lead like the lead up night of and follow up to an election, or maybe you do it over like a sale period for retail, but you can actually highlight, on your line graph essentially, although area graph, you can actually highlight those areas, and it's yeah, a very very similar behavior to this, and I use that all the time because, no offense Adobe, I really don't like your annotations. Oh, I think we lost Damon again.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask one question. We can drop conveniently, but like, so this is just a right click and then a stack bar. Oh.
Yeah, you may lose me again. I don't know. So I'm not sure what's going on with my connection. I agree, though, the annotations aren't great. I actually made a request to add annotations into other trend views because you could only see it, I think, for line and maybe bar,
Yeah.
but you can't see it for like combo or any of the area ones. And so, what were we trying to do here? Yeah, if you switch it to normal bar, it looks weird. You can see.
Yeah, I was just playing around with what you had built.
Yeah, see, it looks like that, and I didn't find that to be as visually easy to, And so if you switch it to stacked, now the downside with stacked is that if you are not looking at something that is clean, right? Like where the cutoff is clean. So like if you switch it to weeks, you'll kind of see what I mean, right? If you switch it to weeks, you'll see this one cell that's stacked between the two, and that doesn't work. So you'll have to be conscious of the time periods, like this, that you're looking at. And then that isn't as clean.
Yeah.
So you'll want to make sure that your release periods are either aligned to, beginning of weeks, which isn't as practical. So that's why I had it on day.
Yeah.
But to
You
Jen's
know-
point, you don't have that problem with area stacked.
Yeah, you can do
stacked
area.
is the same.
Yeah, try doing the area or area stacked.
And it'll be pretty clean as well. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, and then that way you'll see that partial time period where one ends and the other slides and begins. So same effect. Yep.
And actually, in the area stacked, like when I'm doing my own annotation, if you mark 0 as none, you don't get that gradual line. Like if you go and change those settings to interpret 0 as no value, it will actually clean up the display, or it should clean up the display. Maybe not. Making a liar out of me. It used to work.
It's been a while, maybe. Yeah, area is something where I made a request for it to touch more. I think it used to only go to months. And I made a request for it to go down to even day or anything granular. And they actually put in that feature request. But for some reason, this display sometimes gets really slow for me. I don't know why. Don't know if anybody else experiences that, but it's this one in particular.
The area visualization is slow?
Yeah, for it to load. Like if you're displaying anything even lightly complicated from a segmentation standpoint, I've found that it takes a little bit of time to load. Maybe it's just me, and there's no issue. But yeah, I don't know if there are any questions around this, but it's a trick that I've found that works, that I've found many uses for.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to start using that because I really like that, especially like if I'm trying to outline sprints or what's going on between certain releases.
Yeah. There was a feature request, though, that makes this so you don't have to do this, right? And that is changing the colors, Don't know if that will get approved, but it will make it easier to do this. So, yeah.
We can always hope.
It was in my top 10. I think.
Yeah, it was too. I moved it up there. It's like, so I don't have to finagle with all these. Somebody who goes in behind me and they're like, "Why are all these weird segments with date ranges in here? Who's doing this?" It's me.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I would almost actually be tempted to do them as ad hoc date ranges, so they're not clogging up my components list.
Yes, yeah, I would definitely recommend that. That you're right, exactly what you just said. So that it's only by report.
Yeah, I hate clogged up, especially since these date ranges also show up in your drop down on your panels.
Yeah, you have to go through 5 miles of date ranges.
Yeah.
Definitely. Hopefully the sandbox gets purged every now and then.
It's a sandbox.
Yeah.
It's probably worth calling out, like for anyone who, and maybe you mentioned it, but these should, just like if you create a custom date range, overwrite whatever time period you have selected in your calendar view up top. So Catherine, if you scroll up to the top, since this is a kind of little note, so like, let's say maybe you had a different time range up here in your calendar. If you add a custom date range or these custom segments with date ranges, that'll overwrite your calendar set. So that's just something to be mindful of.
Yes, for that display. Yep. Yeah. And you actually just brought something to mind too that I didn't know for sure before until now, is if that feature keeps its effect when you leave date ranges and you're using segments also, and it does. So it's, yeah. Cool. I don't know. I don't see any questions other than me hopping in and out of the meeting over and over.
I'm
I'll
not
just do
seeing
it
any
again.
questions either.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
So
Yeah.
either people are just absolutely stunned and taken aback, or they're all taking this as corporate nap time. I don't know.
Yes.
Whichever, no judgment.
And this is my last one. I can
Mhm.
barely read it, so I'm going to zoom in. All right. Yeah, so this will be a really quick one, but this is something that I've asked to do every now and then, and I also use this a lot during new implementations. So in my last organization, we were using demand base. In my current one, we moved from using demand base to 6sense. Everybody has their different preference on which of those types of tools to use. I'll reserve mine. Fun fact, though, I was able to see the difference between the two together for a time period where they were overlapped, and they have different lists. So it actually would be beneficial to have both tools if you want to have a larger SMB audience, but not very cost effective. But yeah, so in this case, one very frequent activity is when you're trying to make a dimension for the first time, and you're either implementing something like demand base or you're making your own dimension, and the dimensional items within the dimension have to be isolated from each other. They're not supposed to be overlapped. I often use a Venn chart just to see, hey, for the sample time period, do I have any shenanigans where there's overlap? If I do see overlap, then somewhere on my site, something is happening that's incorrect, right? And or somehow in my implementation and launch, my data elements are not defined properly. And so I use a Venn chart to see that clearly, and to also make sure that there's an issue. If an alarm goes off that I've set that says, hey, there's something weird going on, or I'm up or down on a threshold, I'll use a Venn chart to see if things are clean as well. This isn't as much of an issue in my case right now because I'm largely on an island in my current organization, so I'm the one doing it, and if there's a problem, it's me that made the problem. But in larger organizations where you have multiple analysts or multiple architects, it could be that something like this could happen. And so here on the right, you see an example where I am trying to make page segments, and I want to make sure they're independent of each other. Only homepage, only forum, only, what was the other one I made in there? It's tiny article, right? And I purposefully made them wrong, right, to show what happens if they overlap incorrectly. And so, so using Venn charts that way has been helpful. I also use Venn charts to help teach the concept of hit, visit, visitor. I don't know if I could share my screen just really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see if I can figure that out.
While you're doing that, I'll also mention I've used VINs before for A4T, like target, like making sure that the overlap between like test and control is not there, or if there are multiple test variants, stuff like that, to try to make sure we get clean reads. So it's another shout out for VINs.
Yeah. And I want to just point out, like, as Damon said, it's great for, seeing if there's something wrong in the implementation or, something, but also just bear in mind how you build your segments could be causing some of the problem. It may not be a problem with the site. It may be a problem with your segment scope. So always just, double check what you're doing if you do find a problem before you go down a rabbit hole of, oh my God, it's not tracking properly. And you spend weeks trying to investigate it only to realize, oops, made mistake.
Been there, done that. Live and learn, right?
I think we all have.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's almost always your segment or you calculate metrics or whatever it is, but it's usually that, and it's not an implementation issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I found that to be pretty true. I can't actually share my screen. I'm finding I don't have permission. So I think that's more from my organization, which I guess is understandable given we're a cybersecurity company. But I could try to explain it. I didn't have time to create it. And it's simply that if you create, like, let's say a homepage segment, right? And you have a hit version of the homepage segment, and then separately you have a visit-based version of that homepage segment, and then separately a unique visitor version, right? So you have all three. You can make different Venn charts, right? Where you have a Venn chart that has all three of them together for page view, a Venn chart for all three of them together for visit, and a Venn chart for all three unique visitor. And you'll see visually that, in one case it shows a tiny circle and then a larger circle and then a larger Venn showing the breadth of coverage, for each of the different segments. And it's just kind of a neat visual to put them side by side. And then also beneath that tables that show the list of visited URLs. In this case, it will show one URL homepage, right? Or page type homepage. And then in the visit based one, it will show that, but then also all the other pages that they visited because it's a visit based segment. And then visitor exponentially increases that list. But you'll notice that the unique visitor count is smaller, And so it's just a super neat visual way to teach your internal coworkers the concept of hit visit visitor, because I don't know about you guys, but for me, it comes up all the time. Like
Yeah.
when it comes to learning about segments, it takes a few times to explain to them why they would want to use a hit-based segment here, visit-based here, and visitor-based, over here. And having that tutorial slash, example view helps with that. Yeah, here you go. Perfect. Yeah, so this is the first one, and this is where you see all three of them, and you're using, what is that, page views, right? Now, if you were to Control Z one step back, and then copy this 3 times, and then switch out page views for visits for one and unique visitors for the other, you'll see that at the end, they're all one singular circle together, if that makes sense. And I shrink them so they could be side by side. But yeah, you're basically reconstructing.
This is super handy.
Yeah, that's
It
cool.
is. Yeah, sometimes I really wish that you could just say, leave this space blank and
Yeah,
keep
go up
this in
here.
line.
Yeah, that's a cool visual. There's a question in the chat whenever we're done with this one.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to because I haven't used that product, but Mark is asking, what is the benefit of, has anyone used 6 Sense? I have not.
I have not either. So, but maybe since Damon was talking about it, when he runs again, he can.
Oh no.
Okay. Maybe we'll go on to the next question and come back to Damon when he is able to speak again.
Okay, so I think this was a pre-submitted question, but on multiple dimensions. Do you have any suggestions? Oh, hey, David.
Sorry, I came up right in the middle of you starting to speak. I was going to type this up, but I won't anymore.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
6 Sense and demand base, either of the tools, right? I have found that their reach is similar, meaning if you're looking at SMB or enterprise, I'm just using an example. You see like a Venn overlap. This is a good example of Venn overlaps. Venn overlap for SMB, Venn overlap for demand base at the same time was not overlapped with each other, meaning that their lists are different, right? So the benefit you get is you're getting a different list of companies, between the two different organizations. When you use 6 Sense or demand base, you're only seeing a percentage of the visitors that hit your site. That's one thing to be aware of. Neither tool perfectly covers all of your audience that comes in. You're not going to get insight on every visitor that hits your web property. But Mark, Mark. For 6 Sense, you get insight into the company names that are visiting your site, the revenue range, employee range. There's a huge gambit of different dimensions that they offer that you can capture and ingest into Adobe Analytics or CJA. You could also have a backwards pipe into your data lake so that for sales stage data, it's present there as well. So we find it, from a testing perspective, powerful. You could have a different, SMB message on your site versus an enterprise message, and increase your conversion rate for both audiences doing it that way. So there's quite a bit that you can do. But for it to be worth such an expensive tool, because they're not cheap, right? You should be doing that type of personalization and capitalizing on it and using it in AEM experience fragments and stuff like that. So there's a whole huge battle plan you could construct to capitalize on it, use it, automate, include Sensei. The list goes on. It's pretty powerful. If you're wondering if there's a preference between the two, I'll be honest, I don't have a preference between the two. They both have a pretty good coverage. I'm hearing a lot of people say they prefer demand base, but I've also had a handful of people say they prefer 6 cents as well, and I think it's also more affordable, slightly. But yeah, just my own experience. Okay, I'll stop talking because likely I'm going to get kicked in a second anyways.
Mark, I believe you can come off mute if you have any follow-up questions for Damon. Or
Oh,
feel free to
cool.
type in the chat. Mark says thanks. So I'm gonna guess he's good. Okay, we'll scroll down to the next question. So again, this is about multiple dimensions. Do you have any suggestions for pulling data with multiple dimensions from a workspace? For example, by day and another dimension. For dimensions that have many values, you don't want to drag and drop the second dimension on top of an individual day 14 times. You don't want to do that. If I'm looking for a breakdown over 2 weeks.
Well, actually, I do with this a lot. But also, the big question is this going to be a rolling report? Because if it is, there's a difference that you're going to want to change, as well as are users going to be able to change the date range themselves? Like when they go in to look at the report, can they change that date range? So if you've curated 2 weeks and they choose 6 months, can they? So one of the things that I like to do is first, I open up the date range so I get the maximum number of rows, which would be 400 in the tables. Pull in day as my dimension, make sure all 400 are shown. Before I do any dragging, I actually want to change the behavior of the table. So if you hit the little gear on the day, not the column settings, the actual dimension settings, you want to choose breakdown by position. This means that any breakdowns you do will not be locked specifically to March 1st, March 2nd, March 3rd, March 4th, whatever. It will actually follow the position. So if the date is rolling, position 1 will always have a breakdown. Position 2 will always have a breakdown. Hence why I increase it up to 400 on the off chance that somebody is going to change the date range to something else. Once you have all 400 rows, select all 400 rows.
Do you want to do?
This is just a sample. When it is selected, now you can pull your breakdown over one of them and it will break down all of them. Now, the one caveat / problem here is that it will only show you the top 5. If you need more than 5 breakdowns, or 5 items shown in each breakdown, you will have to go through one by one and change it. I know it's a bit of a pain, but again, long-term benefits over short-term pain, probably a good thing. So you can go through, change all of them to be a breakdown of 10 or a breakdown of 25 or whatever you need. When you've done that, now you can change your date range back to the 2 weeks and rolling and save. And all of those settings that you have done will be saved to the report. Oh yeah, I wish there was a way to
Feature request.
The recording, so annoying. Is there any way to collapse or expand all? I wish there was a way. I also wish there was a way to change the number of breakdowns globally for the entire report. There isn't at the moment. I suggest going into the Experience League logging that as an idea, because I will absolutely vote for it. And I'm sure everyone on this call will vote for it.
Yep. And I know this may seem elementary, but just since there might be some newer folks, Catherine, could you show how you did select all the rows?
Yeah, if you undo, or just pull day in again, you can just do it a second time, yeah. So you can actually just do a shift, like if you select one and hold down shift,
Cool.
You can select all your rows.
Yep, I thought there could be some folks on here who hadn't tried that before, so could be a little time saver.
And we also just got another question. What is the trick to see dimensions side by side in a table? At the moment, non-existent.
Well, you could do, the warehouse, but yeah, that's exporting a file.
Yeah. This is actually something that is in my top 10 of requests in Experience League ideas. I logged this a couple of years ago for flat table visualizations. So rather than showing it as a breakdown, but to actually literally show side by side with sorting options on those columns. They have released it onto CJA. So if you've got CJA, yeah, they did. Yeah, they released it to CJA. They did not release it to Adobe Analytics. So Adobe Analytics people right here are fighting for it. Like,
yes,
I'm not going to give up.
In my top 10.
I don't think I'm going to get CJA anytime soon. So, yeah, I know this is this is something we really need. Now you can probably do, again, as Damon said, you can use the data warehouse export. That does give you flat table, but it also comes with the annoyance of you don't get deduplicated metrics. Like unique visitors and visits. There's no deduplication. You could try doing it in Report Builder. I don't know if the new Report Builder is better at this. I know that there was quite a few limitations on the old Report Builder for trying to do multiple dimensions. I haven't tried it, so it's something that's worth trying. But remember, if you need deduplicated, you basically need another request. So you kind of have to break it out into separate requests: a request for your totals, a request for items, and not the easiest, but technically doable in theory. But yeah, no, we're gonna keep fighting for flat tables because you're right. It makes so much more sense to have flat tables and breakdowns.
I'm with you guys. Okay, let's go to the next question. I think this one was this the one from the EMEA group?
This was from Experience League.
Okay. The Web SDK one?
Yes.
Okay. We will get that one first then. So the question, we are in the process, and I'll zoom in some more. We're in the process of switching from the Adobe Analytics extension to the Web SDK extension. The Web SDK extension was created as a new tag for testing purposes. The issue we are facing is migrating this tag with Web SDK into our production instance. Testing has been verified and validated in staging, but what we had hoped to do was include the new tag along with our old Adobe Analytics extension tag in production for a certain time frame. The reason for this is to cross-reference the two tags analytics, to make sure everything's actually identical with live data. But I've read that a duplicate Adobe tagging is not possible. Is this true? And if not possible, are there any suggestions on final migration to production before all Web SDK extension changes are made to the old tag?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're trying to use the same suite, definitely a bad idea.
Yeah, I would not do that, but it does raise a good. Just thinking out loud, because we started with SDK, but my last organization was moving That's why I left. No, I'm just kidding. No, the SDK is actually really good if you're started on there. But Megan, were you going to speak on this? I see that you have some notes in here. Or
Yeah, I just threw in some other suggestions. Like my team is actively going through this migration, so we haven't ever like done multi-suite tagging, right? Like, because to my knowledge, it's not really possible. Like in one launch, Adobe
It is
launch property,
possible. It is possible. It's just tricky.
It can mess up your data. There's a lot of server calls like that you're paying for. So this is not something my team has done. But we have like in the QA version, we've sent that to like a test report suite so that we can see just that data. And then like in QA, we've been able to compare the QA data in old versus the QA data and do some of that. We haven't done it in prod because again, like the messiness. But we also we build a very comprehensive dashboard with all our KPIs when we launch. Like we know the hour that we launch, and we look for big step changes up or down that specific hour compared to the previous hours and like the same day the week before, like all those analytical best practices, stuff like that. And then we monitor throughout the week. Stuff like that. And then one thing we do is have a pretty simple to execute rollback plan. We just repoint the whichever property we've just migrated back to the old launch property code. So that's a pretty quick and easy thing to do, and we make sure that all our stakeholders know that we can do that, and it is easy if needed. So.
Yeah. I have done multi-suite test tracking before. So the experience was many, many years ago in the old, upload your own files, like pre-launch. And the way that you did it back then was you would actually have two different app measurement files. And one of them would actually be recoded so that the S object was actually something else. So it was like S2 object. And then when you were declaring all your variables, you would call S dot, evar1 for this tracking and s2.evar1 with a different value for the second one. And then you would call your s.t and s.tls or your s2.t and your s2.tls separately. So all the data that you were storing in those different objects would be completely separate. Now, Launch does have the ability to do this. I don't have the details offhand, but I do know it is possible to have multiple suite tracking using the S object. Now, with WebSDK, that doesn't use the S object. This should be significantly easier because now you don't have to try and create those variant S objects. As long as you're not sending it into the same suite, like if you've got your old suite using app measurement and a completely new suite using WebSDK, you should be able to have both sets of code in place, building out your S object and sending your analytics calls the same way you do client side for suite 1, and then your web SDK going into the XDM data stream and having that mapped to a completely different suite. There should be no conflicts between those two because they are fundamentally different sets of code. So it should be possible. But of course, it's additional server calls. So you need to be very mindful how long you're going to run this for. Can your contract support doubling every single call on your website for how long? Are you willing to pay for those extra server calls at the end of the year if you've misallocated and gone over your budget? So that's the other concern that you want to be mindful of.
Yep, ditto to all that.
But I mean, for a short period of time, probably not a bad idea to double track as long as you're okay with having a new suite, because then you can actually compare side by side exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with the testing part, like doing it first in staging, because
yeah.
in staging you get the parity. I would then also do a short period of in prod testing too. Just I know in a perfect world, staging should always match into production, right? But we all know that sometimes shenanigans could happen. You just want to make sure, that something isn't broken.
Yeah.
Do a test for, I don't know, 30 days, to your point, Jen, depending on your contract.
Yeah.
We bake in quite a bit of extra leeway, per month allotment just to make sure we don't go over. But, not everybody may have it set that way. So,
Yeah. Now, the other thing, if you don't want to use a new suite as you're switching to your web SDK, because you still want that, 2 or 3 year retention of data, maybe you set up a secondary suite to switch all of your app measurement tracking to. So kind of like you keep your primary data on the new web SDK, or or one of the two. Like maybe for a short period of time you send them to different areas while you're evaluating your web SDK. When you're happy with it, you then switch, to your proper suite, whichever way you need to go. But at least that way you're not sending all the data into one suite and doubling everything. Oh, we have a question. All right. I needed to do. Oh, go ahead, Kat.
No, I was going to read it all. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. I needed to do a Paratow Analytics, and I'm used to doing this in Tableau. We recently moved over to Adobe Analytics. Is there a quick method to get a limited cut of data to do this in Report Builder or elsewhere, unless it can be done in workspaces? Without knowing, I'm not sure exactly what kind of report you're doing. I mean,
you mean like an isolated data set, perhaps, like just 2 weeks, or I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Melissa, can you maybe add some clarity to what you're trying to do?
I think she's typing.
Yeah, probably. Typing is always slower than talking.
And again, I think you might be able to come off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can compare 2 different time periods against each other in Adobe. Yep. And
Yeah.
rolling time periods too, if you want, like last month versus 2 months ago, and have like a rolling report that shows that. So as time transpires, you're still seeing that view.
Yeah. Kat, can you maybe pull up a freeform table? We'll just show a time comparison.
And then
yeah. So here's the last week. You can actually right click on visits and actually say add time period column. And you can say, you can use one of the pre-selected prior week to this date range, this week, last year to the date range, this week, 52 weeks prior, or you can choose a custom date range of your choice. So let's just do the easy previous week, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, this will make the display a little bit busier because you'll notice that under each row, if you zoom in, Kat, you can kind of see that it's kind of got like a gray date written into each cell.
Yeah.
That kind of helps you figure out that, oh, this is the March 2nd row, but it's actually corresponding to February. I still can't read that. It's too small, but
You could change the project settings to be expanded versus concise.
yeah, that's true.
oh, true.
And that would help loosen that up, I think, a bit. Yeah, go to expanded, and then that would, yeah. That's a little better. Not like by 1 millimeter.
Unfortunately, this will change your entire project, not just the one table. It would be nice if we could change the display per table.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also settings like if you have a specific date, there's some out of the box things that say like same date last week or stuff like that I use often just as a time saver.
Yeah, and if you're trying to see like a difference, then you can click on the totals in the time period at the top and like right click show time you could also do a metric comparison, but I think this is what I've actually personally ran into today.
Yeah.
It will show odd numbers because of dates, right? But you could at least compare specific cells to each other and totals. You could give it a shot and see what happens. But if you click on visit and then visits, you could create, a metric from the selection at the top. And then
Sorry, this one?
at the very top, I think it says create a metric. So if you click on visits in the first column and then hold down shift and click on the second one, you can create a metric. But you'll probably want to start with the prior time period. I see what's going on. Okay, yeah, last week you had it correct.
Oh, actually, well, you can always change it afterwards by editing how it goes.
Percentage change. Yeah, but see, this is going to probably be odd because I think time comparisons don't do this really well.
They don't. This one does not work in the time comparison. If you're breaking down by any other dimension, if you're breaking down by like page type or page name, this works. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, there you go. Boom. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that you can do when comparing time ranges is there is a visualization called the key summary, I think.
A panel?
No, it's a visualization. It is
key metric.
There.
Key metric summary. There you go. And this will actually allow you to choose a metric and choose the two ranges that you want to use, and if you want to apply a segment to it. And you can even customize this display. You can prioritize the number over the percentage change. You can hide the line visualization. Like there's a lot of different settings here. So if something like this is more to your liking, it's certainly available to you.
Cool. I think we are at time, so feels like a good place to wrap up. Thanks everyone for your questions. I feel like we covered a pretty good range of topics with visualizations to technical details. It's a really great session. Thanks everyone. And again, the recording will be on our YouTube channel.
Yep. And for those who are going to be at Summit, come see us.
Yep. See you there.
Yeah. Bye y'all.
We'll team chat in Cat for you.
Sounds good.
There you go.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye guys.